Rose here, DeFi Academy. We're going to be talking all about this Bitcoin ETF here. What's up, Instagram? It's Brian Rose here at DeFi Academy. We're going to be talking all about this Bitcoin futures ETF, what it means. I'm going to be talking about regulation. Will there be an Ethereum coin? I want to talk about where Bitcoin is headed from here, what it means for the whole ecosystem, all that good stuff. I got my Zoom audience here as well. Just thumbs up if you're here on Zoom. Let me just see you. Turn those cameras on. I got Jim and Kim and Joe here. Joining us from Down Under, former grads. What's up, Kim and Joe? They're up late to do this, so I appreciate them, and I appreciate all my students inside here. Again, leave me questions on YouTube, on Instagram, here on Zoom, and let's just jump into this, folks, because this is a really important issue. At 9:30 a.m. this morning, New York time, the very first Bitcoin futures ETF started trading. Come on, throw those hands up, everybody here. Give me some holla, give me some love. Type in yes in the chat if you're feeling that. This is a big deal. It's something that was rumored for a long time. When I was at the conference last week here, 2 weeks ago in London, the Token 2049, when I was on stage, we were talking about it. The word behind the scenes was it's happening any week now. But we've been hearing that for a long time, including Ethereum 2.0 is supposed to be here every week now. But we know that could be years away. So we never know what's really going on. It's finally happened, and I want to talk about what that means, what exactly did happen, and what this means for the future. Not to mention what it means for Bitcoin price, but for Ethereum, the rest of the blockchain, what it means for you, the future of the world, family, all that stuff. So let's jump into this. First, I want to say I'm not a financial advisor, even though I dress like one sometimes. And this is not financial advice. Nothing in this video is, all right? But I will say this. I spent 15 years on Wall Street, in Chicago, in London, in the financial markets, in the derivatives markets, fixed income, you name it, I traded it. And I'm finally able to use some of this knowledge for good, is what I'm trying to say, all right? And the whole point of DeFi is getting the banks out of the equation. It's getting a real relationship with our money once again. And I also see that's what blockchain is doing, and that's what DeFi is doing. I couldn't be more excited. I also happen to agree with my recent guest on London Real, Jeff Booth, who thinks, and he said, quote, Bitcoin will save humanity. I know that's a big statement, especially if you're new to this space, but if you're in my DeFi Academy, that's why you're here probably, because we really think this is the future of making the whole world a better place. And if that sounds a little crazy, I get you. But the deeper you go into this, you realize that this is an incredible system. It's a public ledger blockchain that keeps everyone accountable. And I just spent 6 months in the dirty business of politics running to be the next mayor of London. Trust me, you want public accountability in your governments, in your banking system, in everything. If we had it, this world would be a better place. Not to mention, you get to have a real relationship with your money, and the bankers aren't telling you what to do and ripping 6 to 8% out of your annual income out without you even knowing it. So, all right, we'll get into that. But today I want to talk about this big news. Again, if you're here on YouTube or Instagram, leave me some questions here below. Give me some hearts, give me some love. If you're on Zoom, turn these cameras on. We've got a great Zoom audience here. Great to see Ben here from our course. What's up, Ben? We got Bassie, we got Claudia. We got, of course, Andrew, former grad. We got Kim and Joe, former grads as well. We got Dylan Cook, who's on my course right now, buying those Ethereum options and rocking it. He's got the, what's that book you got, Dylan? The Price of Tomorrow. Oh, yeah, that's nice. That's just Jeff Booth's book, right? Yeah, recent guest on London Real had a whole book about deflation and how he believes Bitcoin's the future. So let's talk about the big news. As we're talking, Bitcoin's right around 62.6. And it's pushing near its all-time high of about 64,800. And again, a lot of that is on the back of this announcement. And these things are trading today, right now on the New York Stock Exchange. A pension fund can go in and basically buy exposure to a Bitcoin future. It's never been able to be done before. And again, a lot of these institutions have these risk management committees and these protocols that only allow them to invest in certain instruments. Now, this instrument is being traded on the New York Stock Exchange. You know, how many pension funds own shares in companies that are traded on the New York Stock Exchange? Raise your hand if you think a lot of them do, right? Here on Zoom, show me some hands. Yes, all of them do, right? They take your pension money, they take a big chunk out of it that you'll never see. They invest into publicly traded companies, and they give you a little bit at the end of your retirement and say, aren't you happy, right? But that's another story. But these today means they can actually now go in and invest in Bitcoin with your pension fund, and a lot of you are asking your IRAs and your other investments to get Bitcoin exposure. So this finally solves a real problem that we had, because institutions before this could not really get exposure to Bitcoin. They had a hard time holding physical Bitcoin. It's a real pain to do. As you know from my course, you have to have wallets and security and public keys, and it's very complicated. Also, a lot of institutions can't invest in the futures contracts, which are traded on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, but they can buy An ETF future, which is basically like a share in Apple or Microsoft or Ford or General Motors, right? That's what it's like. And now, as of today, they can get that Bitcoin exposure that everyone is asking them for. And that's the thing. The end users, the clients, ultimately are demanding this, and they're forcing the institutions along the way. So this is happening now. We expect this will dump a whole lot of institutional money into this space, which we haven't seen before. And again, the end users are asking for this exposure because they're seeing Bitcoin go up. They're seeing that cryptocurrency is the future of finance, and they're thinking, I need some of this action. Otherwise, my fund's not going to outperform the other guy's fund, and I'm going to lose all my money. Again, I've worked on Wall Street for many years. Bankers, they're just like anybody else. If someone's going to eat their lunch for them, they will change. And that's what we're seeing happening here with people asking for Bitcoin and with this Bitcoin ETF and the futures ETF. All right, so far so good. Everybody here on Zoom, just thumbs up if you can. If you're coming here late on Zoom, turn those cameras on. I see Bernard Sims, Sima here in my Kings of DeFi course. What's up, Bernard? I need you in that accountability doc, though. I need you getting through those modules faster, but good to see you here, Bernard. We got Don Bartelli, we got Simon Pearson, we got Clint Sykes, my man as well, rocking it in Kings right now, buying those NFTs, Clint is. All right, we got Ava Tompkins, we got Sean as well. And hey, those of you on Instagram, thanks for being here. Leave me some comments. I'm going to go to YouTube comments as well and just check in with you. So let me talk about what's going on here. First, again, I'm not a financial advisor. The reason I'm talking about this is because we've gone hardcore into DeFi and crypto assets in the last 6 months of London Real. Now, let me just talk about that real quick. I got a lot of messages because we're celebrating our 10th anniversary this week on London Real. I'll be live tomorrow at 5 p.m. London time talking all about the 10 years of craziness that's London Real. And a lot of our subscribers are saying, Brian, why are you only talking about DeFi and crypto assets in the last 6 months? And I tell them this, because this is the future. I think this is the quickest way we can transform humanity, which has always been our mission here at London Real. And whether in the past I was talking about activism or I was talking about physical practices or meditation or ayahuasca or whatever, I always thought that that was a way we could all change in going in the right direction. And this is the same thing. This is your wake-up call. All right. And again, I've had some people say, Brian, it took me the 7th video with one of these top CEOs, with one of these billionaires, until I finally got the picture. And now I'm in with you. So that's okay. We're here. We're going to keep going on this because I'm invested in this ecosystem now for the next 10 years is my pledge, because we really think this is the future. It's a way to create generational wealth and also help 2 billion people out of the world that don't have access to financial services. We think there's something fundamentally wrong with that. I think that's a violation of human rights. And it's happening right now, and we're all part of it, and I think that's wrong. So we're building these ecosystems. That's why we're here. Again, I teach all this stuff inside our DeFi Academy. There are links probably everywhere, but it's londonreal.tv/DeFi, DEFI. My next course starts in 13 days, Monday night, and it's a crazy fun time. Anybody here on Zoom, give me thumbs up if you're enjoying your time in the DeFi Academy. It's a lot of fun. Again, finally, you're not the only weirdo out there talking about Bitcoin and crypto. You're with a bunch of weirdos. And again, all of my DeFi Academy members are doing very well. They've been positioned for the past 4 or 5 months. Some of their investments have nearly doubled, of course, and this is going way high in the future, and we couldn't be more excited about this space. So let's talk about this future. I want to talk about what it means. I want to talk about a guy named Gary Gensler, who runs the SEC, and why he has allowed this to happen, and why he is a very important man in this space, and we need to watch what he does and what he says and even what he eats for lunch, because it's going to tell us what the future of regulation is going to be. And then finally, I want to talk about what that means for the future price of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all these other coins. All right, does that sound good for everybody here on my Zoom audience here? And again, I'm going to probably go fast here. My team always says, Brian, you say you're going to go for 20 minutes and you go for an hour and 20 minutes. So I'm trying to prove them wrong today and keep this fairly short and choppy. So again, let's jump into the big news that's happening. So ETF future started trading today on the New York Stock Exchange, which means right now you can go buy basically a share that tracks a Bitcoin future almost directly, and you can stick it in your portfolio, in your stock portfolio. This gives access to a whole new pool of money that has now Bitcoin exposure that they couldn't get before. This will in kind put a lot of money into Bitcoin and the rest of the ecosystem, even if they aren't actually buying the physical Bitcoin. Does that make sense to everybody here? Because if they're buying the ETF, which is then buying the future has to buy the Bitcoin to settle. It's pumping money in this regardless. Even if they're not actually on Coinbase putting a coin in their wallet, it's still putting money into this ecosystem, which helps it evolve, it pushes prices up, it helps it develop, etc., which we think is a great thing. Why is this happening now? Let's look at this. First of all, this is not the first time people have applied for ETF futures. It's been going on for years and years and years. But this is the time where finally the SEC and Gary Gensler allowed it to go on without them objecting. That's the big thing that's happening here. And finally, they have acquiesced and allowed it to happen. And the reason this is happening for a few reasons, and this is what I want you to all go with me on. First of all, it's Bitcoin. And I have decided that Gary Gensler of the SEC has decided to classify Bitcoin as something very different than Ethereum and the other crypto assets out there. And let me just talk on that quickly. Bitcoin is considered digital gold, digital property. It's probably the only arguably fully decentralized crypto asset. It has security, it has scalability to a certain extent, it's decentralized, and also it doesn't try to do anything else. There's no smart contracts, it's not trying to ruin the banking system. It just wants to be digital gold, and as my guest Michael Saylor, who's the CEO of MicroStrategy, who's got about $6 or $7 billion worth of Bitcoin on his public balance sheet of his public company. You could go buy MicroStrategy before this and you'd kind of get Bitcoin exposure. It was kind of an ETF before, but now you can go buy the futures piece. Michael says, I like Bitcoin because it has low aspirations. It's not trying to be anything else. And I believe that Gary Gensler of the SEC has decided to not ever try to classify it as a security, which means it's not going to be attempted to be regulated by the SEC, which means you have to jump through a bunch of hoops and do a lot of things because they're worried about mom and pop. My mom, Betty Rose, 76 years old in San Diego, California, is going to buy a share and not know what it is and lose all her money and complain to the federal government. I believe, and I'm almost certain, based on all the signaling he's made, that he's going to leave Bitcoin alone, but that's not necessarily true with anything else. This is one further step in allowing this thing to happen, which makes me think Gary is going to leave this alone. All right, so is everybody with me here so far with one of my assertions? The SEC sees Bitcoin as digital gold, and again, as one of my guests recently, Tika Tawari, on the episode, he said, Brian, comparing Bitcoin to Ethereum is like comparing not apples to oranges, but apples to like an automobile. They're completely different instruments that do completely different things. Completely. So you shouldn't even compare them, even though they're on the same exchanges and they go up and down. And yes, they're both crypto assets that use, cryptography, and they're decentralized, but otherwise they're very, very different. So first, it's to understand what Gary is thinking about these coins. He's going to let it be. He's not going to classify it as security, and he's allowed the exchange-traded future to go ahead. Thank you, Gary. We appreciate this. By the way, I'm about 12 hours deep into one of Gary's courses on this at the MIT Sloan School of Management from 2018. I actually went to the Sloan School of Management back in 1992 and 1993, but they weren't talking about Bitcoin back then because it hadn't been invented. I took some courses there, and Gary actually teaches a course on blockchain, and he is a very smart guy who really understands this technology. But he's also basically a politician. And he has to signal to 300 million Americans what to do and what not to do so he doesn't have congressional hearings and a bunch of people losing their life savings to crappy coins that are sold with misinformation. Is everybody with me here so far with what Gary's doing? All right. So again, I don't want more regulation. I want finance decentralized. I want the banks to have their long-standing oligopoly shut down because it's ruining a huge chunk of our economy, ruins your relationship with your money. But I understand why Gary's doing this, and he has to signal these things is the way he does it. He recently said that stable coins were the poker chips in what is becoming the Wild West of cryptocurrencies, right? Now, Gary knows better. He's teaching this class at MIT Sloan School. He is extremely smart. He spent a career at Goldman Sachs. He spent time at the Commodities and Futures Trading Commission, which actually regulates the Bitcoin futures contract. And so Gary knows exactly what he's talking about, but he's also trying to posture and signal so crypto companies don't get ahead of themselves and do things they shouldn't do. Now, Gary is going to stop some innovation if he goes too far, but he's also going to try to prevent some fraud happening and some bad things happening too. All right, is everybody with me here on Zoom and YouTube as well, and I hope on Instagram? So that's what's happening. Again, sometimes you have to read between the lines with what they're signaling and what's going on. So Gary hasn't necessarily approved this thing, but he's allowed it to go ahead without objecting. And so this is a major win, and it goes to show that, again, this hypothesis I have in mind is true, that he's going to leave Bitcoin alone, but he has talked about considering something like an Ethereum yield product, which Coinbase proposed having, or a yield on stablecoins. He's proposed that those could be securities. And that's the way they're going to try to regulate the other side of crypto assets. And this is something to be concerned about and something to think about and something that we need to talk about. So again, Let's look at Bitcoin as an asset play. It's digital property, digital gold. That's one thing. We want to look at everything else right now, which is Ethereum and all the other blockchains. There's a lot going on there, and it's very exciting. But we're going to see what Gary Gensler and the SEC does. We do think that they are going to have an issue with stablecoins. They're going to have an issue potentially with Ethereum and some of the other coins out there. And that's something we're going to have to watch right now, because a lot of people are asking, is there going to be an Ethereum future that's an ETF on Ethereum futures? Is that going to happen? Now, raise your hand if you're here on Zoom that you think that's going to happen with Ethereum. Thumbs down if you think you're not. And if you're here on Zoom, I got an in-studio audience here that I can tell. Kim and Joe think maybe. Dylan's not sure. Okay, so let's talk about that really quick, because if there's a Bitcoin, ETF future, why can't there be an Ethereum or a Dogecoin ETF future, right? I mean, again, why not? Now, these are my thoughts on it. I do not think we're going to see an Ethereum ETF future anytime soon, because I think that Gary Gensler and the SEC is really positioning itself to draw the line when it comes to Ethereum, smart contracts, and stablecoins, which are all based around that network as we speak. And so I think Gary's sticking potentially a line in the sand there, because the next step of that is FedCoin. Now, this is a federally sanctioned digital currency that some people call like FedCoin. Is everybody with me on that? It's where the US now basically has a dollar on the blockchain, and that comes with it all sorts of other issues, information, security, you name it. And so we have to look at what the SEC and the Federal Reserve want to happen with that. Do they want to control their own dollar, or do they want to allow it to be controlled by things like Tether and USDC and these other private companies that are trying to simulate a dollar? Do you think the Fed wants to own this market going forward? Thumbs up if everybody thinks that. You think thumbs down if the Fed is willing to just let it go and let somebody else run something called a dollar and trade it on the blockchain? I don't think so. I think they're going to have an issue with this, and that's why I don't think we're going to see, an Ethereum ETF future anytime soon, because I think Gary is trying to signal that he's going to start to regulate some of these things in a bit more serious manner. And I think we're going to see a decision on stablecoins coming soon. And I think there will be a battle in the United States of the Fed versus stablecoin providers on who is going to ultimately control the dollar, the digital dollar. All right, is everybody with me on that thesis here? And that's what I think we're going to play out. Now, I was at a private event with Alex Mashinsky, the CEO of Celsius, a couple weeks ago. It was on Saturday night, and I did a fireside chat with him. We were standing up in chairs because there was so many people there. But we were talking, and he said, Brian, the next war is going to be World War III, and it's not going to be a land war or a nuclear war. It's going to be a currency war. You're going to see the digital yuan battle it out against the digital dollar. Now, stay with me here. You can look at, say, for example, 60 countries in Africa that all have massive amounts of Chinese investment, from dams to all the building projects to ports, etc. And Alex wanted to say, well, what if they have to use the yuan? What if other countries have to use the yuan versus the dollar? And he said it becomes a currency battle. And that's what goes for global domination. Now, I don't know if that's true, and I don't know if it's not, but it's something to think about. And I think what is happening right now with SEC and Gary Gensler is they're positioning to control that dollar. And I don't think Gary is willing to give up ground right now and just say, go ahead, bring in the Ethereum ETF futures, bring in all the other stuff, go ahead and allow yield products on these, go for it. I think they're really trying to posture and control. Also, it's not obvious which agency is going to ultimately regulate this or what's going to happen with Congress, etc. These are the big questions going forward. Is everybody kind of here with me here on Zoom and here on Instagram? And I hope this is helping all of you, by the way. And again, leave me any questions here. I see some coming in for YouTube, and I'm going to jump to the questions here on Zoom right after I'm kind of done here. I got a couple minutes left, but I see some great questions coming in here from Jock and Alexandru and KM as well. So just keep these coming in here and keep asking questions, and I'll try to answer them and again, wrap this up. I'm 19 minutes in, so I'm going to try to give myself another 10 or 11 minutes, and we'll get this. So that's what I see as the next step. What's going to happen with stablecoins? I think there's going to be some type of a call in the next 6 months. As we saw recently, Coinbase, which is basically considered the chosen one when it comes to centralized exchanges in America, as in it's the biggest, it's the one that it seems that regulators want to allow to become bigger. They recently were going to offer a product where you could get yield on a stable coin, and they stopped because basically the SEC threatened them and said that they were going to make it very difficult, and they were going to sue them if they started out. Did anybody watch that kind of play out here? I know my Academy members did here as well. And again, we go deep into this in the DeFi Academy. This is just basics, the stuff I'm talking about in the DeFi Academy. We go much deeper. But that's something that Brian Armstrong, CEO of Coinbase, he had to stop doing And that means you can't now buy a stable coin and get 4% yield, or if you're on Celsius, an 8% yield. You can't do it on Coinbase. And so, the SEC kind of already put that line in the sand and won that battle. And Brian Armstrong thought, you know what, I'm not going to push that. We're going to keep doing these other things. So expect a call on stablecoins in the next 6 months. Stablecoins are now the de facto gateway drug of crypto. It's something you can tell your friends at a cocktail party and say, hey, have you got dollars in a savings account? Yes. How would you like to get 8% yield? Yes. What are you getting now? Nothing. It's a great way to get people opened up to the space. What's the volatility of stablecoin? It's the same as a dollar. Does everyone kind of see how it's becoming something that's very interesting to a lot of people, and the yields are high? And it's, again, one of the reasons that the Fed is concerned. If you ask Alex Mashinsky why the yield's so high, he said, look, we've never, ever seen a dollar that can be moved around, cross borders, all of these things. He says, I think we're seeing the real yield of a dollar as opposed to the one that is squashed down artificially by the Fed right now. And he said, I think we're seeing the real yield when it comes to these stable coins. And it's an interesting theory. So the next battle is going to be for this. We need to watch Gary and what he's doing. Back when I traded on Wall Street in the 1990s, we used to listen to what Alan Greenspan said. He was the Federal Reserve Chairman. And he would make these cryptic statements once a month. And we would all just try to pick apart the word he used and try to figure out what he was trying to tell us about the economy, because he couldn't come out and say it. He would just have to kind of imply, and then the markets would move on the back of it. I think Gary's doing something very similar. He's very careful with his words. Even when he was in front of Congress a couple weeks ago, he really was careful with what he said, because he knows if he says something, it's hard to go back on it, and he can literally move markets with what we see in future regulation. And we're going to see this play out in the next 6 months when it comes to stable coins. We've got to watch this. I would love to see stable coins available for everybody to invest in and get lending on it as well. But right now, a lot of people struggle, especially in the US. Let me talk about finally what I think is going to happen with the price of Bitcoin and other assets in the space. Again, I'm not a financial advisor, and this is not a financial advice, but let me tell you what I've been hearing over the past 6 months with all the great guests I've had here on London Real. And we've had some of the best in the business, the CEOs of the biggest protocols. I've spoken with people with probably tens of billions of Bitcoin and crypto exposure over the last 6 months. And I'll tell you exactly what they're telling me. And this is what they told me before the ETF future was announced. All right. So now it becomes even more true. Let's talk about Michael Saylor, CEO of MicroStrategy. Thumbs up here on the Zoom if you've watched my interview with Michael, or you know who Michael is. He is a great advocate. He went to MIT like I did, graduated a couple years before me. And he made a big move last year to put Bitcoin on his public company balance sheet. Again, to have a company that's traded publicly and to buy Bitcoin is something we never saw before. He did it before Elon Musk did it with Tesla. And he started to put billions and billions on his public balance sheet. And, Michael is a big believer in this asset. He thinks it's the best investment for the next 1,000 years. And Michael always said to me this. He said, Brian, would you like to invest in Bitcoin? Would you like to have bought Bitcoin the day before the press release comes out where Amazon says that they're going to accept Bitcoin, or the day after that press release? Would you like to own Bitcoin before or after that? He said, Brian, would you like to own Bitcoin the day before Apple Pay says that they're accepting Bitcoin on their platforms, or the day after Apple Pay? He said, Brian, would you like to own Bitcoin the day before or after Google decides to accept on their platforms? Does anyone here know the answer to that? You probably want to own it before, right? So Michael makes a great point. He could have easily said, Brian, do you want to own Bitcoin the day before the ETF future is announced and live, or the day after? And he would have made a good point. Now, it doesn't always mean it's going up, but he has a very good point. And Michael's all in on this. And he basically says, Brian, I'm trying to buy as much Bitcoin as I can, and I will buy it at any price. He basically said that. All right. So he said, last year when I was buying it, I would have paid up to $100,000 for it. He's like, that's the way I see this asset, and that's the long-term vision of it. So when you guys got people like Michael out there doing that, there's a lot of other people doing the same thing. And they all are buying this because they see it as an incredible, unique asset that is deflationary by nature. He's got a t-shirt that says 21 million on it. Does anyone here know what that refers to? Raise your hands if you're a couple of DeFi Academy members. Sean knows what I'm talking about. Of course, Andrew does as well. Sabin as well. 21 million. That's the total amount of Bitcoins that will ever exist in this planet, right? Recently, somebody went on, it was JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon said, I don't know if that's true. Maybe that's just made up. And somebody put like 5 lines of code and said, no, it's true. Actually, it's in the code. So there's 21 million Bitcoin. They reckon a few million have been lost forever. There's currently 18 billion total. And you're going to have, this is the only instrument that is deflationary by nature. Every other currency in the world, they're constantly printing money. That alone gives it a ton of value that a lot of people are saying, wow, there's something here. And again, we go all into this in our DeFi Academy. If you want to join us, we start in 2 weeks. Link below, londonreal.tv/DeFi. Check us out. It's an amazing experience. We go through this. So that's Michael Saylor's call on it. Dan Moorhead, $3 billion of Pantera Capital, calling for Bitcoin to be up 10x in the future, in the next 5 years, right? Tika Tiwari, Raul Paul, Anthony Scaramucci, all calling for Bitcoin at 500,000 to 700,000 over the next 5 years. This, I can't make this stuff up. People repeatedly coming on my show from all aspects with massive amounts of money investing that are calling for this asset to appreciate at that kind of scale because it's digital gold and it's deflationary by definition. Is everybody with me here? All right? And so that's what they're saying. Again, it's not financial advice, but that's their call. And these are some very smart people. There will be volatility. We will see 50% price retrenchment, 60% price retracements. Those are brutal and painful and hard for most people to comprehend, which is, again, why we teach trading principles inside our DeFi Academy in Module 4. For those of you in the Academy now, like Dylan, you're going to get that next week. But you have to have discipline and a trading peer group to be around this and to make it through. But if you're willing to go through that volatility, it's an incredible asset. Let me say one final piece about the whole ecosystem, and then I want to answer questions. What does that mean for everything else? Is that what everyone's wondering here? Come on, everyone's got the question. Brian, what does that mean for Cardano? What does that mean for Ethereum? What does that mean for my Dogecoin? What does that mean for AVAX and Solana and all these, and Luna, all these other really interesting protocols that are solving issues? Well, again, I'm going to go back to Dan Moorhead, who puts out some incredible research for Pantera Capital. But he made a recent analogy, and I just want to quote what he was saying. If you go back to 1998 and look at the tech companies at the time, what did the lay of the land look like? Look at it back then. You had Microsoft that was dominating this landscape with a $218 billion market cap, 218. Is everybody with me here so far? Okay. At the time, Apple was worth $3.5 billion, Amazon was worth $2.2 billion, and Google and Facebook, how much were they worth? Zero. They didn't exist. Okay. That was what the tech landscape looked like back in 1998. Now, Dan is saying that he thinks kind of that's the way we look at crypto right now. And that basically Bitcoin is the Microsoft of that space. Now, if you fast forward in the tech world from 1998 up until today, what happened? Microsoft did great. It went up 10x. Great investment. The other companies, they went up 500x, right? Now you've got Apple and Amazon and Google, $1 trillion plus values. Is everybody with me here? So again, they were all good investments, but certain things scaled more. And so Dan's way of looking at Bitcoin says, look, I love Bitcoin. His Bitcoin investment fund is up 67,000% since he started in 2013. I mean, Dan's an OG. You have to give that guy respect. And he says, look, I still think it's going up 10x, but he says, I also think that you want to broaden your portfolio if you want to see those kinds of returns that we're also going to see in technology. Now, let me say one final thing. Gary Gensler has made references to the banking boom in the 1830s to 1860s, where all these banks around America would issue their own notes, and they were all trading basically their own currencies. And it all played out and didn't work out very well, right? That's kind of why they had a federal currency in the end. And Gary said, I don't think there's room for 5,000 or 6,000 currencies. History is not kind to that play, right? Does everyone kind of see the point Gary's making? And right now there are 5,000 to 6,000, if not more like 10 or 12,000 different tokens you can invest in these centralized exchanges or else. Dan Moorhead's retort to that is this. He said, I agree with you, but what you're seeing in these tokens, they're not all trying to be currencies. They're all pieces of technology. And most of them are built on other blockchains. Most of them are built on Ethereum. Our second layer solutions are trying to add fundamentally different values to the equation, whether it's Audius that's trying to do audio rights for musicians that runs on top of another layer. And Dan's invested in those companies and a bunch else. He does a lot over there. And he said, these are all technology plays. They're not currency plays. And so he said, that's why I think you need to broaden your portfolio. And again, if you want to see those bigger returns, you have to look outside of Bitcoin, which he compares to more like the Microsoft of the time. And again, he's a fan of Bitcoin, but he doesn't see it going much more up than 10x. And strangely enough, basically every single guest I've had here in the last 6 months has said something similar. So look, they all could be wrong. It's not been the first time. Everyone's been wrong before in this world, but I'm just telling you, this is the consensus, and this is how it makes sense to me. So just want to finish up here before I go to questions. If this is interesting to you, great. I just want to say one thing to everyone that's listening now. Right now, it's not too late to get involved in these markets. That means to learn, to invest in yourself, to put these things in your portfolios. Next year will be too late. That's what I think. I think next year is too late. So if you have friends, if you're watching this still and you haven't pulled the trigger, get involved, educate yourself, and get around a group of people that can help you navigate this difficult ecosystem. Is everybody here with me on Zoom, right? And tell your friends and family this. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir here on Zoom and maybe some of the people on Instagram as well. But I mean, you know, this is the time to tell your friends because we think everyone's talking about NFTs. First of all, nobody knows what an NFT is. And most people don't even know what Bitcoin and Ethereum is. Barely, right? It's still, 1% of the world owns these assets. We're still very early. But this is changing super fast, super fast. By end of next year, I think it's too late for most people. So I'd say to everybody out there, pull the trigger and invest in yourself. Learn. That's the biggest thing to do. Learn here. Again, I stopped at a gallery last weekend and they were selling digital photography, right? A limited edition digital photography. So they were selling something that by definition had a cost of reproduction of 0. And I said, this is a really cool picture. I said, what about the NFT? And he said, oh yeah, I heard about those. I need to check them out. And I was like, your job is selling digital replicable art and you don't even know what an NFT is? Like something's wrong here. So the world doesn't know yet. So this is an amazing time to get in, to be invested, obviously with intelligence, with discipline, with advice, with a great peer group. And again, I'm not a financial advisor, but find a way to educate yourself. That's what we do inside the DeFi Academy. If you're curious, go to londonreal.tv/DeFi, DEFI. Take 60 seconds, send me an application, tell me why you want to be in there. I'll literally go check my computer after I'm done. We got an amazing group of people, right? Come on, tell me everybody here how good the Academy is, how good the people are. We got Andy here, Kim and Joe. We got everybody, Ben, of course, and we got Marco. We got everybody here, Reinhardt as well. Thank you so much for Clint Sykes rocking it for us. We got, I'm just constantly impressed by our students. In my Kings of DeFi, our students are teaching us things. We got a mining expert in there. We got an algorithmic trading expert. We got people from all over the globe. Some people have their own funds. Some people have their own dApps. Some people have never owned Bitcoin before. We're all stronger with this ecosystem. It's the most incredible thing I've ever been a part of. And I love it. And every day I'm getting more excited by the space. That's hard to happen. Every day I'm getting more excited. So I'd say to everybody out there, this is your wake-up call. Even if you're listening to me, maybe you need to be woken up, you know? People have been telling me about Bitcoin since 2013. Max Kaiser was here in 2013 screaming his head off about Bitcoin, saying words I can't repeat, right? And I didn't really get it. And Andreas Antonopoulos was here in 2015, 17, 19. Tika was here, and he had great coins, but I didn't go all in until this year. So I'm just telling everybody out there, this is happening. It's the fastest adoption of technology in human history. I don't think this will ever happen again at this rate in human history again. And so you want to be involved in this. And guess what? We can get access to this. Yeah, let me just take a show of hands. Raise your hand if you had access to Facebook's Series A investment back in 2007 when Peter Thiel put money into Facebook. Did anybody else get in on that round? Was anybody offered to put money in there? Probably not, right? You didn't even know it was happening unless you were in Silicon Valley with maybe some of the top 10 people that got the phone call, right? And that's the true with most of private equity and startups and technology. You never got the chance to get in early. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about here, right? You never saw it, you never heard about it because it was all done through, whispers and venture cap and all that stuff. And the only time you heard about it was when it went public. And then you saw, a 20x gain and you got all happy. But you didn't see the 1,000x gains, the 10,000x gains. Now you can see that. And that's what's incredible about this system, about this entire ecosystem, because it's all on the blockchain. It's by definition peer-to-peer. It's Web 3.0. These networks want you to own some of it. They want you to profit from it. They want you to be a part of it. And it's a whole new way of thinking. And so again, if you haven't got the message yet, get involved now. I think the best way is to invest in yourself and educate yourself. Simple enough. And this week, my students, as they know, are going through, they're putting on yield swaps. They're putting on liquidity pools. They're buying options on Ethereum because I think the fastest way to learn is to do. And that's what we do inside the DeFi Academy. So again, if you want, click on the link, londonreal.tv/DeFi and join us. I want to go to some questions right now and answer any questions. If you're here on Zoom, just type in a question and it'll just get jammed into here as well. Let me just say, I think some people are, I got a question here just asking me about my perspectives on banking. So I joined Wall Street in 1993. I was 22 years old. I went to a trading floor on a building that was right next to the World Trade Center, 33rd floor, Bankers Trust, and I was trading fixed income derivatives. I got to see banking and trading like right on the front lines. Like the Wall Street, the movie, I was living it. And it was really intense. It was a lot of fun. I learned a lot. And then I went to Chicago. I traded for the First National Bank of Chicago, fixed income derivatives, treasury derivatives. I came to London and worked in the credit derivatives market. Did some of those first transactions and worked there all the way up past the financial crisis. And saw a lot of volume, learned a lot of things, made a chunk of money. And I also realized that the banking industry doesn't look out for its customers. You're part of a banking system that's been around for 500 years that hasn't really changed. The biggest technology the banking industry introduced in the past 50 years was the ATM machine. You like the ATM machine? It's pretty cool. I like it, right? But it's been around for a while, right? So they haven't really innovated because it's not in their interest to innovate because it takes away their margins. So that's why I like DeFi and crypto, because it finally disintermediates and finally really disrupts this industry that's really woven into our DNA. We don't even understand our life without a bank telling us what to do and taking our money and doing all. It's almost like a brainwashing going on, and I think we need to change that. And I also think the blockchain and the transparency and the decentralization and the security is a way also of us as a species becoming better. Jeff Booth recently on my show, he said Bitcoin will solve global warming. I was like, what? He said Bitcoin will solve global warming because Bitcoin is deflationary. By definition, it's not telling you prices always need to go up, whereas the dollar, the euro, the yen, and every other currency ever created always tells you prices have to go up in the future, which means you have to produce more and make more. And he said that alone is a reason why we're warming this planet. He said, why don't we get real and understand the price of everything is actually going down? Look at your iPhone. Everything that this phone has created turns the price of everything on this phone to zero. Does everyone understand what I'm talking about here watching me right now? All of your videos and content, it's zero. Your pictures are zero. Your social interaction is zero. Your flashlight on the back of the camera is zero now. It's like all there. But why are prices going up? Doesn't really make sense. Prices should be going down. The reason they're going up is because we're part of these fiat currency systems that have to print money. They devaluate your savings. They hurt the lowest income people the worst. The rich people get off a little bit better, but once every 100 years is a cycle where everything gets reset and we start all over again. We've been doing this since the Romans, and we're wondering why it hasn't worked yet. Guess what? Bitcoin can actually change that. And we're seeing the adoption, and it's by definition deflationary. If you look at the price of all of your future costs in Bitcoin, they go down. They go down in the future because it'll cost you less Bitcoin in the future. But in dollars, it goes up in the future. Why? Because the dollar is worth less in the future. So again, some real basic instruments here, and you can be a part of this. Let me say one final thing. If this stuff complicates you, don't worry. I always tell my students, do you understand how the internet works? No. Do you use the internet? Every day. Great. Do you understand how your car works in detail? No. Do you drive a car? Yes, I do, every day. So again, do you understand how a plane works? No. Do you fly a plane? Yes. Or do you fly in a plane? You don't need to know how this stuff works on the details, but you do need to be understanding these protocols and be involved. So again, I don't expect you to understand cryptography or some of the hash functions on Bitcoin. Again, I'm going through a 25-hour course right now at the MIT Sloan School of Management, and I went to MIT, and this stuff is very challenging, okay? And it's good because that's what makes it secure, but you don't have to understand it. You just have to be involved. And so I would just say make sure that you get involved here. Anthony Scaramucci said to me when he was on the show, he said, Brian, your first Bitcoin is the hardest one to buy. Raise your hand in here if you know what he was talking about, Anthony Scaramucci, right? The first one's the hardest to buy, right? Robert Parker, you know what I'm talking about. After that, you can't buy enough of them, right? Especially when this news is happening, you're like, man, I'd love to buy some a little bit cheaper. I wish I bought more. So the first one is the hardest to buy. What does that mean? It means that everybody needs to get educated and buy $50 worth of something and understand this space. And that's what I'm doing to everybody. My 17-year-old daughter now has a hot wallet, and she has Ethereum. My mom, 76 years old now, has a hot wallet, and she has stablecoin and Ethereum. That all happened in the last few weeks. So the best thing you can do is get someone in your peer group to at least have a little bit of a crypto asset, because they can be involved in this incredible, future. And so again, we teach all this stuff in the DeFi Academy. It's me live with a tie twice a week, right? Kim and Joe, you can vouch for that, right? I'm here dressed up every week, different combinations as well. Sometimes I close my eyes when I pick out the colors, you can tell. But this is what we teach, and we try to encourage people to put these positions on, and then we try to keep everybody in touch and show the gains or losses of all of their trading portfolios. And so far, my students had an incredible August. In September, which was a very difficult month for everyone, some of my students still had gains up near even the double-digit gains. Some of them had single trades of 500, 600, 700% by trading in some of the instruments that we teach, futures and options, etc. And some had losses, and that's okay. But they didn't lose all their capital, and that's what the whole trading discipline's happening. October is looking to be one of our best months ever. And again, we have hundreds and hundreds of students that are invested in these markets and doing very, very well. And again, we're giving them the trading strategies for the next 10 years so they can do it with a really good system and really good thing in place. All right, let me take a couple more questions. I got Jock here that says the ETF is great news, but it's going to be settled in cash, not Bitcoin, so it doesn't directly translate to Bitcoin demand. It's a good point, Jock. So again, this is a ETF future. It doesn't mean they hold the actual Bitcoin. But again, it does mean that Gary's allowed this thing to happen. Whereas he might be a little more uncomfortable with the actual Bitcoin. The future doesn't always track the Bitcoin price, and I can speak on that quickly. If you own Bitcoin, first of all, it's a very different experience than owning a future on Bitcoin or owning an ETF. If you own Bitcoin, you actually have to have it. You have to have it on a wallet. You have to have security. You have to have approval to have that asset on your balance sheet. It's quite complicated, actually. And sometimes the actual asset itself in the future trades at a range and at a basis. And this is something that happens and we have to be aware of. Also, Bitcoin can have yields. By owning Bitcoin, you can actually get yields on it. We know you can swap it out and get yield swaps. So again, the Bitcoin physical and the future, they always trade at slightly different prices. That's true with any asset, whether it's gold or cattle or soybeans or even treasury bonds. I used to hold treasury bonds and get a 6% yield, and I would fund them overnight for 3%. My bond future would not get that overnight yield. So again, holding a physical always has ramifications than a future. Their prices always track slightly differently, but this is still a massive win, Jock, by having this here, because potentially you're dumping on billions and billions or tens of billions of dollars into this asset class. Is everybody kind of with me here on why that's important? Again, I was just reading something. At one point, Bitcoin was mining at max capacity $30 million worth of Bitcoin a day. I think Grayscale at one point was buying $40 to $50 million of Bitcoin a day for their funds. So you can see what's happening. They were buying more than the supply, the daily supply. And so where does that go? Well, they're going to run out, obviously, right? So at some point you have a supply and demand issue here. The price is rising. Yes, the spot in the future will always have some discrepancy. It can be large, it can be small, and we can learn from that. But at least we see these institutions getting access to the asset. And again, I really hope, Jock, that we see in the future, we see the actual physical Bitcoin held as for that ETF. But right now we have the futures. We're going to say, okay, good. We'll take that right now as a win. We'll get those involved in the institutions, Jock. We'll get everybody comfortable that Bitcoin was on their balance sheet for 3 months. And guess what? It didn't blow up. You know what I'm saying, Jock? Does everyone know what I'm saying here? I think it's small baby steps here. We're making some great progress. Let's make sure we keep pushing. And that means talk to your congressmen, talk to your senators. Let them know that this is important. That makes a big difference. Have these conversations. Get your friends and family with small pieces of these assets to start. Get them learning in the DeFi Academy. We're having interviews twice a week live with the best in the business. I've had Michael Saylor here. I've had Raul Paul. I've had Anthony Scaramucci. I've had Dan Moorhead. I've had the founders of Polygon here. We've had the founders of some of the bigger blockchain companies here. I got AVAX here next week. They're like top 12 market cap. It would be like me having the CEO of Microsoft here. That's the kind of things we're doing. So watch these things and get the information. Educate yourself, but also try to get that learning in that peer group as well. That's what we're really pushing here inside the DeFi Academy. Let me see if I can take one more question. And then, oh man, it's already 44 minutes. Sometimes I don't keep the time that I'm trying to. All right, but I'm going to try to wrap this up. Let me see if I can take another question here. Raul Paul was talking a little bit about Ethereum. Raul Paul's a big Ethereum fan. He really thinks Ethereum's going like 10x to 40 grand. He's a big Ethereum fan. If you go listen to Raul Paul, you'll want to pause the video and go buy Ethereum. I was interviewing him here in the leather chair here. I wanted to stop the episode and go buy Ethereum. Like, he's very bullish on this asset. Again, it's NFTs, it's smart contracts. It makes a lot of sense, and I'm a big fan of Ethereum. But it is a different asset. It's a technology play. Bitcoin is an asset play. So just to understand those two differences, and again, we go deep on that inside the Academy, and we can talk more as well. All right, got a bunch of other questions here. I'm going to just try to take a couple here. Let me just see. Julian's asking about live on Zoom. Will the full session be later? You know what? I don't know if I'm going to record this video. Actually, I just did this to just jump on here. But Julian, I would just say, apply to our DeFi Academy. We go through all these basics. You got the peer group. Or watch our videos on LondonReal.tv. You can watch all those latest episodes. It'll put you in touch with everything you need. Let me see. I got Jock talking about the Quant CEO. Has some really interesting questions about TradFi. We've reached out to the Quant CEO. So if you know him, tell him to get back to us. We'd love to talk to him. Anybody in the top 50 market cap right now, we're talking to those CEOs and founders, because we want to know what's going on in their mind. I think this is the best way to get news straight from the source, from the horse's mouth, as they say. All right, be careful what you read on the news blogs and stuff, or the Twitter feeds, or the forums. Like, I always wonder what the agenda of that is. I always like to listen to the real people making the real decisions. That's why those are the people we have on our show, and I try to tune out some of the noise, because sometimes there's a lot of news around something, and yeah, I always question the agenda of the news. Look, I'm going to wrap this up here. I just want to say I really appreciate everybody here. I would love to see your application for our Academy. The next course starts in 13 days. It'll be right here, same platform, 6 p.m. If you want to be a part of this, trust me, this is the best thing you'll ever do. LondonReal.tv/DeFi. You see all these beautiful faces here on Zoom. You'll be connected with them, and the wizards are on the call. Again, I appreciate everybody here. Good to see you, Jock. Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate you, Sir Reinhardt, as well. Kim and Joe, always big love for Kim and Joe. We really appreciate you guys. We got Ello and Clint. Clint is rocking it here. Robert Parker, look, he's got the certificate of graduation. Appreciate you, Robert. Again, just amazing people here. So thank you, and Eva and Ali and Greg and everybody. Thank you for putting your cameras on, and thank everybody else as well. Mark Williams. I'm sure I forgot a few people here as well. John as well. So thank you. The Academy is amazing. You all are keeping me all fired up about this space, which is great. I hope to see everybody in there. For the rest of you, make sure you're actually listening to these people speak. Get the message. Again, get invested, but put your stop losses in, your disciplines and everything, so we can all have the smoothest ride possible. There you go. I'll try to do more of these lives and jump in and let you know what's going on. Look forward to seeing you all inside the DeFi Academy. Click the links. I'm broadcasting live tomorrow, my 10-year anniversary. Come and ask me some questions. And then on Friday, we've got the founder of the AMP token, another banking alternative, top 50 market cap or top 60, who will be here live on Friday. So be here for that. And then AVAX next week. We're just going to keep going till the wheels fall off is the plan. All right. Big love to everybody out there. Get invested. Tell your friends and family. Educate yourself. I'll see you guys inside the DeFi Academy. All right. Bye, everybody. Bye. Thank you, everybody on Zoom. Appreciate you guys. And thank you, everybody here on Zoom, on YouTube, and thanks, everybody on Instagram. I appreciate all the comments here. I'll try to go back and try to answer these things in real time, and I'll be doing these more often. So thank you so much. YouTube, big love here. We're going to be live tomorrow for my 10-year anniversary. So thank you for coming. Leave me any comments below. I appreciate all the comments coming through here. Thank you, Alex. I see your emojis there as well, and I just appreciate everybody being here. Again, just learn about this space. It's such an important one. All right, until next time. Bye.